Hello, my name's the Doctor. You're watching Hadley. Reverse the polarity.
How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Markiplier, and tonight we are playing Five Nights at Freddy's. I've been told by a lot of my friends that I need to do one of those iceberg internet challenge things, because my channel is literally all about niche media. The trouble is with that is if something exists, it already has an iceberg made about it. That's practically a rule of the internet at this point. Godzilla, Jurassic Park, Harry Potter, it's already all been done, and by people far better at it than I am. Then I remembered Primeval, which does have an iceberg, but no video accompanying it, and so here I am. I have talked about Primeval before, and I plan to again in the future, but for context I'll explain the show's basics. Primeval is a late 2000s sci-fi show that premiered first on ITV and then moved to Watch, and its basic premise is following the exploits of a company called the Ark as they deal with holes in time called Anomalies, which are allowing creatures from the past and future to stray into the modern day. The show's main cast are Professor Nick Cutter, a paleontologist whose wife disappeared through an anomaly years ago, Connor Temple, who studies under Cutter and is the nerdy techie guy of the group, Abby Maitland, a spunky tomboy who joins the team because of her expertise in animal handling, and James Lester, who's the kind of straight man that has to deal with the official proceedings regarding the group's activities. The show ran for 3 seasons between 2007 to 2009, was cancelled for 2 years, and then renewed for a further 2 seasons, both airing in 2011. The show is remembered fondly by, well, those who remember it, but the license has been pretty much dead in the water since then. I could only find one iceberg on the internet, one by a Reddit user called General Amadeus, and it's not the greatest. It's okay, there's some stuff on it that even I, a huge fan of the show, didn't know, but it's kind of ugly, there's a lot of missing stuff, and I disagree with a lot of the depth of the rankings. So I set out to remake theirs, but mine has ended up becoming a totally different thing in itself. So this is my iceberg, but I do credit the General for giving me the inspiration behind it. Oh, and in most of my videos, I like to just play it completely safe and not use any footage of anything that I don't own, you've probably noticed. But I feel that this would just be a really boring video if it's me talking about something with still pictures over it without me actually on camera. So for first for the channel, I will be using flipped footage of Primeval in this, and if I do get copyright strikes on it, then I guess make up for it by liking and subscribing? Let's begin. The sky above the iceberg. This is Dodo tier, the stuff that's basically handed to you while watching the show that pretty much everyone already knows about. Future predators are bats. This one is pretty much explained in the context of the episode. The predators that feature in the Season 1 final and then onwards are a future species of bat that have lost their wings and become apex predators. Rather interestingly, in an observation that a lot of people has made, this strikes a similar concept to the Night Stalker from Dougal Dixon's book After Man, in which bats' elongated arms have lost their wings and become their main hunting resource. I don't think it's a rip-off, more a homage, but interesting nonetheless. Sarah is dead. Yeah, although it's never explicitly stated, when the actress for Sarah didn't want to return for Season 4 due to a move of production studio, it meant that her character was just absent going forward. It's kind of annoying because she had only been introduced a season earlier and was quite bigged up to be important to the role, just to get a dramatic shake of the head when Connor and Abby ask about her whereabouts in the next season. They never explicitly state that she was dead, maybe as a potential backdoor for if they were ever able to convince the actress to return, but it just tastes wrong in the mouth. This is the first of many complaints I'll be targeting towards Season 4 and 5, you have been warned. Merbeasts are future primates. Again, something practically confirmed in the context of the episode is the idea that the semi-aquatic creatures featured in Season 2 are a future evolution of primates, possibly even humans themselves. While I don't think that they are humans, because I think humans are extinct in the primeval future, one look at their upper body structure and their jaws, and it's pretty much an absolute certainty that they are related, with my personal headcanon that they are a future lineage of baboons. Ethan is Patrick. Okay, this one actually was confirmed in the episode, but it's on the list because it had also been a fan theory in the build-up to when the reveal finally happened.
When he was a kid, Season 3 main character Danny Quinn lost his brother Patrick in a creature incursion, but he believed that his brother was alive and had escaped through an anomaly. Thus is a deciding factor in him joining the team. And it's later revealed that time-travelling terrorist Ethan Drabowski is Patrick, alive and well, though travelling with a different name. Maybe outside of Leek being revealed as a traitor in Season 2, Primeval never really had plot twists as its strong points, but I think this was quite a good one. It's a shame that as soon as this plot twist becomes relevant, both Danny and Ethan are essentially written out of the plot. For me, it seemed like they were tasting the waters for a potential spin-off there involving them and a time tribe, but, well, this was during Season 4, which was when the show was on its decline. Primeval New World. Okay, so after Primeval's last season, the franchise didn't die off immediately, but it was able to squeeze in the Canadian spin-off called Primeval New World, dealing with the same plot but now in the Northern America/Canada landscape. It doesn't have a great budget, and though the creature designs aren't great, they're at least used creatively. But unfortunately it aired at a time where interest in the show was waning anyway. It came right off the back of the last 2 seasons, which neither of them were great, and so the show only ran for 1 season. Look, if you haven't seen this one, you're not missing out. It went with the same quality as the later seasons did, to the point of where I actually, personally, class it as Series 6, so if you're into that, by all means, but for the most part, we're not going to be talking about Primeval New World anymore on this iceberg, because it's kind of its own separate entity. Character options. So this is a fun one. If you're a fan of Doctor Who, then you have definitely heard of character options. They're the ones that made all those old Doctor Who figures that used to absolutely swarm the shelves of Woolworths and Toys R Us. And, believe it or not, in its early days, Doctor Who and Primeval used to have some pretty serious competition. So it only made sense for character options to bank in on that and release figures for them too. In total, they did 2 variations of Cutter, 2 of Connor, 2 of Abby, Lester, a Jenny and a Claudia, 2 Helens, Stephen, and an Anomaly incursion set with Captain Ryan. With the smaller creatures, they did Rex and a Dodo, 2 Hesperontus, 3 giant arachnids, and a flock of the small pterosaurs. And for the larger animals, we got 3 variations of the future predator, a saber-tooth, a Silurian scorpion, raptor, and the mer creature. They also did some larger electronic figures, including a replica of the show's handheld anomaly detector, and a remote control flying Rex, and also a full-scale Rex with sound effects. Wow, it's almost like they designed him as the show's marketable mascot. Unfortunately, Primeval would go on to later lose its war with Doctor Who, and as a result, these sets had ended up piling up in the bargain bin. They didn't sell very well, unfortunate because it was revealed in 2017 that there was actually a 3rd line of figures planned, including new variants for Connor, Abby, Jenny, Lester, and Helen, as well as new figures for Danny, Becca, and Sarah, and even 1 new creature, the Fungus. Supposedly, even the Megatropion and a full-scale electronic artifact were also planned, but the fact we haven't seen pictures of these makes me think the line was cancelled before prototypes could be produced. Which is a shame because honestly, these figures hit it out of the park. The Future Predator and Raptors I remember specifically having as a kid, and they were like 2 of my favourite toys. And if they had gone around to doing the Drake Rex, my god, I don't think I could have asked for anything more as a dinosaur fan. Webisodes. To build hype for Primeval's revival of Season 4, 5 online webisodes were released on the Watch website to bridge the gap between it and the last season. These see the first on-screen appearance of Matt and Jess, set up Gideon for the new season, and we get the introduction of the non-lethal EMD weapons. Because the last 2 seasons feel so disjointed from everything else, I'm quite a fan of these, to the point of where I'd actually say they are required viewing, because you really need anything you can to bridge the gap there. Beginning with the iceberg now, we have Scootosaurus tier. This is the stuff that the fans of the show probably know about, but will often skip over casual viewers' heads. Series 4 to 5 budget cuts. Okay, yeah, this goes in the last one, and look, I'm gonna level with you here. Series 4 and 5 of Primeval feel like a completely different show, and that is a bad thing. Even watching it as a kid, I could see very obvious big drops in quality. There's an overabundance of reused shots and animations. We've gone from this big, sterile-looking, gorgeous arc to some dingy underground basement. Half the cast are gone, and even the creatures themselves just don't look like they're part of the environment anymore. If it was just the visuals that changed, I could forgive it, but the writing took such a downgrade as well at this point. Though this one's more the fact that they kept losing characters at a rate that they couldn't resolve any plot lines meaningfully, but yeah. Personally, I feel at this point the show became so detached from its origins that I really don't class it as Primeval anymore. The show started off and it was grounded, the drama felt real, it felt like we were in uncharted territory and doing something important. I took it seriously. But the last 2 seasons, man, they're sci-fi channel content. Look, ultimately they have grown on me, I don't mind them as much now. I know this entry is just me complaining, but when I recently introduced my partner to Primeval and we watched through the whole thing, I told her it ended at season 3. And she will have a better viewing experience because of that. Nick Cutter is alive. There is not a single person on Earth that believed it when it happened. Even me, watching it as a child, thought, oh, okay, the clone died and the real one will show up later on. And then he just didn't. But that's where this theory comes in to look at the situation. There's 2 Nick Cutters, the Ark explodes, there's a gunshot, and Connor only finds 1 Nick, which then dies in his arms. Obviously, it is written in a way to make the audience hope that the clone died, and the real one is alive out there, probably escaped through an anomaly. It's really not that big of a leap of faith to think that the reason we never saw both dead bodies was so that they could have a backdoor to reintroduce the real Nick Cutter, should Douglas Hensall ever change his mind about doing the series. He never did, unfortunately, but I always say that if they ever decided to bring back the show, it needs to begin with an elderly, worn-torn Nick Cutter returning through an anomaly into the modern day as its opening scene. Totally Primeval. Totally, yes, that's its actual name, is a magazine that dedicates each issue to a different topic, and issue 9 was Totally Primeval, containing comic strips with adventures in, as well as competitions, puzzles, interviews, posters, behind the scenes, free gifts, that kind of thing. It was fine, and about average for those cheap kids magazines that catches your eye in the corner shop. I only really remember this because I remember it featured a free poster that was just flat out from Walking with Dinosaurs. Not even recolored or anything, come on guys. Anomalies cause cryptids. This is a fun one, and honestly, it's one of the most interesting aspects of the show that I feel they never really hit on properly. Things like the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Chupacabra, they all suddenly make sense with the inclusion of anomalies. Sure, there's a bit of it in episode 1 with Cutter's whole speech about the coelacanth. One of the novels goes quite into it, but we only really see the concept properly explored in series 4 with the Witchveiled Worm episode, which now I find out writing this isn't even actually a real cryptid. Well, no, I mean, no cryptids are real, that's the point, but look, maybe they just didn't hit on it because they thought it would have been too predictable, but I think we were all waiting for the episode with a plesiosaur in Loch Ness. It practically writes itself, and maybe that's why they didn't do that. Primeval Evolved. I actually really liked this game when it came out. It was a interactive point-and-click thing on the Primeval website, which had you working as like a scientist in the Ark, interacting with the main cast, getting a bunch of behind-the-scenes info about the creatures, and after every episode came out, the plot would then update to include the events of it. Like in episode 3, when the Ark is attacked, suddenly your office is damaged. When Cutter dies, you have characters mourning about him to you. It also actually introduced Eve a few weeks before she became an important character in the show, which for a kid is just the best kind of world building. There will be a lot of low-budget Primeval games on this iceberg, but this is the one that did it best. Nigel Marvin. Oh, what a man. So, Nigel Marvin is a wildlife presenter that has a long history of working in paleo media. He did Giant Claw, Land of the Giants, Chased by Sea Monsters, Prehistoric Park, and he even is doing voice work for the upcoming Prehistoric Kingdom game. So, when Series 3 had a subplot of the press discovering the anomalies, who else would it make sense for them to call other than prehistoric Steve Irwin himself? It's a bit of a meta reference, but yeah, as a kid, seeing the main star of all these other dinosaur shows show up for a 2-second cameo in Primeval was just the coolest thing. And then utterly traumatizing when he is immediately eaten by a Giganotosaurus. Had to go there, Primeval, didn't you? Create your own creature. This was a competition ran to have your very own creature design featured in the show. There are a few guidelines. The creature had to be from the future. Ideally, it shouldn't have fur or feathers. Realistically, that was probably for CGI reasons. And it also couldn't just be a fancy, spicy dinosaur. And the competition was bloody successful. It got over 5,000 applicants, and yes, of course, I was one of them. I was gonna put all of these as separate entries on the iceberg, but decided to just do them all in one go. The finalists were the Mandron by Jake Mansbridge, the Ladybird Flea Hybrid by John Joseph Burnbury, the Drapatosaurus by Christopher Bryant, the Dunkleodon by Richard James Partridge, my personal favourite, Chaos by Indy Taylor, and finally, the winner, Megotrium by The Big Bird, The Big Insect by this person, which went on to feature in the Series 3 final. Well done to him, I am not sour, you arsehole. Okay, we're starting to get a bit into it now. This is Embolotherium tier, where fandom and behind the scenes stuff becomes relevant. Abby is bisexual. This one was a headcanon for a lot of people for quite a while. It does kind of rely on stereotypes, with Abby being quite a masculine tomboy woman, but out of anyone in the cast, she does seem to be the one with most LGBTQ plus leanings. That's all there is for this one. A bit of a fan theory, but it is predominant enough in conversations and fanfiction that I thought it was worth including. Time Tribe. I think this has real potential for a story, honestly. Hundreds of people, all across different time zones, end up lost through anomalies, but what if they were able to slowly find each other and build a community? A group of nomadic travellers in time and space trying to reach their individual time zones. Well, we almost got that. Both Emily and Ethan are described as being from the Time Tribe, but yet we never actually get to see the community on screen, nor does its existence have any impact on the plot. We only really have the name Time Tribe because the creators confirmed it later on. I can only imagine that maybe if Danny had stayed, maybe this would have been a recurring factor in the plot. Yet more reasons to hate the later seasons. Novelizations. Okay, I'm actually planning to do a video on these guys soon, so I won't focus on them too much, but I'll give a quick rundown. Running parallel to the show, when Primeval was at its peak, Titan Books released a limited book series to coincide with it, taking place in the canon of the show. These were Shadow of the Jaguar by Steve Saville, The Lost Island by Pat Carney, Extinction Event by Dan Enbert, and Fire and Water by Simon Guerra. And yeah, I have an upcoming spotlight/review of these guys, so make sure you subscribe to check those out later. Bit darker now. Jack was a drug addict. Look, the trope of having a struggling family member who suffers from substance abuse, takes advantage of their family's help, and doesn't want to get better is a common one in both media and real life as well. We've all seen it before, you know what I'm talking about, and that situation bears a lot of similarities to what's going on between Abby and her younger brother Jack in Season 3. He lives on her sofa without contributing anything back, he trades away Rex for gambling money. It bears a lot of similarities. So much so that a popular fan theory for a while was that Jack was a drug addict, but because of Primeval's target audience being kids and younger teens, it couldn't properly portray this on screen. It may very well just be fans projecting to add some grounded and dark drama to the human side of the story, but like Abby being bisexual, I find it complements the canon, if anything. Episode count mirrored. Not much to say here, more of an observation over a fan theory, just the awareness that Series 1 and 5 have 6 episodes, Series 2 and 4 have 7 episodes, and Series 3, in the middle, has 10 episodes, and there's a neat little triangle form there with the episode count. Movie. Plans for a feature film version of Primeval were announced in 2009 by ITV, with Warner Brothers producing the purchasing rights and even announcing producers for it. And then that was the last we ever heard of it. Unfortunately, literally no information on this film exists. If it was a continuation of the show, Serenity style, if it was a reboot or some kind of remake of the episodes like Peter Cushing's Doctor Who movies were, no idea. Abby gets pregnant. Ooh, we all thought this one was coming. And it still possibly might be. Basically, Connor and Abby had been dating for a while. They just spent a year in the Cretaceous period where, well, presumably stuff had happened. And yeah, we all thought Abby getting pregnant was going to be a plotline the show would explore. And it nearly was. In the last episode of the last season, there's a whispered thing said to Connor by Abby, and we all thought that this was the news we've been waiting for. We later on find out, however, that this was a proposal, and the last thing we see of them is them agreeing to get married. So it still ended on the nice hopeful notes, and there's definitely the argument there that what was said to Connor was that she was pregnant, and then the natural progression of that was them getting married. It's up in the air. Personally, I like to think that she was pregnant. Series 6 and 7. When the show was revived, it was only brought back with the promise of 2 more seasons, that being 4 and 5, with a re-evaluation after those had aired if it was worth continuing for any more. It wasn't. Latest we heard of this was in 2017. Tim Haynes said that there was no current plans to continue Primeval, but he would be happy to if a broadcaster came forward. Cutter wasn't supposed to die. This leans into the previous theory that Cutter is still alive, and, well, yeah. Obviously, the writers did not plan to kill off their show's main character in the 3rd episode of its 3rd season. Without resolving any of the plot lines around him, killing him off in the middle of a season was just unwarranted, unrealistic, and just plain disappointing. There's a fantastic Radio Times interview that was done actually really recently, last year, 2021, called How We Made Primeval, and it's a bit of a look back now the book on it is properly closed. In it, regarding Cutter's abrupt departure, it reads, "In another timeline, the series might have unfolded differently. Adrian did have a 3-series arc for Dougie. At the end of it, he was meant to be stuck with his wife in the past, but we had to change that. Cutter wasn't supposed to die then. Danny was meant to stick around for a lot longer, and with the show about to start its 4th season with no main character to focus on, it begins to make a bit more sense why the latter seasons are so disliked." Series 3 was the original ending. Yeah, this one is operating with same logic of the last one. The idea that if Cutter didn't die and the show wasn't forced to end on a cliffhanger, Series 3 would have been its natural conclusion. Although I think the nature of the show lends itself neatly to storytelling, and so I personally wouldn't have had it cut short so early, if I was faced with a decision between the current state of the show or a well-rounded, tying up all loose ends ending at Series 3, hurts me to say, but I would have probably gone for the latter. Quality over quantity, as they say. Raptor tier now, so now we're getting a bit more intense. This is some of the more obscure stuff where I bet even Primeval fans will start to learn something new. Original Future Predator design. In its initial concept by Darren Hawley, the Predator was originally based on a reptile instead of a bat, creating this nightmare fuel. As much as I love the look of this creature, it is a kinda generic monster-looking design, and the producers thought it looked too much like a dinosaur, so it was scrapped and the idea was reinvented with a bat. And let's all agree, the Future Predator is one of the best things that Primeval ever did. Lester kept the Mammoth. This is a short fun one based on a line of dialogue Lester says after the Mammoth saves his life. It was a bit of an inside joke / fan theory that in actuality, Lester, presumably having quite a decent sized living space because of his job, did actually keep the Mammoth as a pet. In series 4 and 5, we then see the Mammoth in the menagerie, so presumably this one isn't true, but it's still a nice thought. Primeval role-playing game. Based on the first 3 seasons, the Primeval RPG game lets you create your own team of investigators, battle dinosaurs, make up your own exciting stories, etc. All you need is your imagination, a pair of 6-sided dice, and your friends, which I didn't have any as a kid, so I didn't play this game. I think it was then also followed up with a expansion pack called Evolution, which was based on series 4 and 5. Don't know. Also haven't played it. Maybe I'll do it for a subscriber milestone. Jenny/Claudia resolution. Okay, so I mentioned it again, there was this interview released just last year called How We Made Primeval. I'm going to link it in the description because it's genuinely actually really exciting for a Primeval fan to have this much information revealed about it, but also kind of disappointing because it's talking about how the show consistently kept failing and losing out. And I'm going to be mentioning it a few more times, but here's the quote specifically about this one. Jenny and Claudia were the same person, having evolved in a different way. Gradually, we were going to reveal that there were people all over the world with a similar situation. We only ever showed her at the time, but there was going to be lots of people in that same situation, and lots of prehistoric animals developing differently. Gradually, Cutter would have noticed small differences in evolution and go to change things back. I like that idea, and Lucy certainly went with it very well, but unfortunately we never really got a chance to resolve it. It was too closely tied with Dougie, and that plotline was never the same again. And yeah, both very disappointing that we never got to see this followed through, but also very exciting because now, in 2021, we're getting answers to what the main plotline of the show was supposed to end up being. Connor and Abby live with Jess. After Connor and Abby return from being stranded in the Cretaceous period, they found out that Abby has lost their apartment, and so the new girl, Jess, invites them to stay with her. And we never get a follow-up to this. We never find out if they go get their own place or if they stay forever with her. It's actually quite disappointing because all of the slice of life stuff of Connor and Abby living together brought a real heart to the show, which, again, was something that was sacrificed between series 4 and 5. The arc is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Although, again, something the writers didn't choose to focus on, you could definitely make the argument that the arc is a very good example of a bootstrap paradox. That being, what leads to the eventual creation of the anomalies is the arc, the group put together to contain them. But because time travel means nothing takes place in order, it means for a large chunk they don't know that the work they are doing to help is actually causing the problem in the first place. This finally comes to a peak in the final few episodes when Connor creates the first man-made anomaly, but it's something that Helen had been warning them about since very early on in the show. Hashtag Helen did nothing wrong. S Club 7. Yes, for those that you don't know, Hannah Spirit, Abby Maitland's actress, is most popular for, other than being in Primeval, being part of the dance group S Club 7. Primeval itself even acknowledges this in the Season 4 episode when they use the music of the band to distract the Spinosaurus. Even though this doesn't actually mean anything, I'm not saying I think Abby was canonically once a pop star, but still, it's a fun reference. Primeval X. Primeval X is a special stop-motion animated project to celebrate Primeval's 10th anniversary. This special is based on and adapted from the existing expanded media of Primeval, namely the official canon novel Shadow of the Jaguar, written by Steve Saville. The project is very top secret at this point, but returns soon as more details and information will be released over the coming months. Due for release 2018. So it never ended up happening. But there was once a planned Primeval fan film that got a bit into development, having a teaser trailer and poster made for it, but has seemingly been abandoned. A shame as well, because it's always the most interesting fan projects that get left behind. Prehistoric Park is canon. So this is a weird one in that it's one of the far later theories to come up where basically Nigel Marvin has been very, very active on Twitter and has said that as far as he is concerned, he didn't die in that episode of Primeval, but dodged through the anomaly, travelling through different time periods. And what is one of his other main shows known for? Being a time-travelling show about dinosaurs. So yeah, the assumption being that Prehistoric Park takes place 10 to 20 years after Primeval, when time travel technology has been perfected. I don't believe it for a second, but nonetheless, as a big fan of both of them, this one makes me quite happy. Finally, the future predator. This is very obscure stuff now. This is really scraping the barrel of the Primeval wiki. Quick shout to them guys, seriously, I wouldn't have been able to do this video without you. No dinosaurs. This one is more of an observation than anything else, but it's one that I quite love. The producers of Primeval have had a long association with paleo media, and so I think it was a bit of a deliberate choice from them to not have any dinosaurs featured in the first season. And yeah, you don't realise it at first, but it don't. It is the Mosasaurus, who was from the same time as the dinosaurs, but not a dinosaur. Same with Pteranodon. They proved that the show could be successful without relying on them. They then later changed their tune for later seasons, but I can definitely understand why, and still, mad respect for the diverse paleo representation. Lost in Time. Okay, I love this one. In 2017, Impossible Pictures released concept art of a proposed animated Primeval series on Twitter. It was never commissioned, for reasons we don't know, nor do we know anything about the plot beyond the concept sketches, but taking an educated guess from the title, it seems to have been set during Connor and Abby's time in the Cretaceous, and would have had them encountering Triceratops, Tyrannosaurus, and dodos for some reason. Although it does also have Rex featured in the art, so maybe the title is just a coincidence. I don't know. But for God's sake, again, if there are any scripts of this floating around, I beg the paleo gods, let's see them. New World on mobile. I had no idea about this one, but I didn't watch New World when it aired, so I wouldn't. Seems like there were two games. One was just a generic VR experience where you could summon anomalies and dinosaur models from the show in real time, and the other being a shooter platformer thing. I haven't the faintest idea how you would go about finding these apps in the modern day. Doesn't seem like anyone has archived them, so I suppose this could count as lost media now? Eye Strain and Picture This. I'm going to do both of these in one go because they're practically the same thing. These were the original comic strips mentioned in Totally Primeval. Eye Strain features Connor, Matt and Abby dealing with a Pteranodon attacking Big Ben, while Picture This has Jess and Becca handling a Tyrannosaurus in an art museum. I am honestly surprised that this is the only source of Primeval comics that we have, as it seems like something that would lend itself quite well to the platform. I'm just saying, in the same way that we got the planned second season of Firefly in comic book form, I think Primeval could do that quite nicely. Tree Creeper is real. This one is one of my own personal entries, because if you've seen my first ever YouTube video on the channel, which I don't recommend because it's awful, then you'll understand there's a bit of history around this that comes to me personally. In a nutshell, the producers designed the tree creeper as a bit of speculative paleontology to say, what if there was a species of dinosaur that evolved to live like a gorilla? What they were unaware of, although it wasn't a complete match, was a species akin to this that did already exist, that being the Drepanosaurus, which lived a lifestyle believed to have been similar to a lemur. Episode names? This is something I didn't find out until extremely recently, and I am shocked that I didn't know. All of the episodes of the show have names. They were never listed with names on the DVD, they don't have names, but you check IMDb and yeah, they all have names. Starting with Season 1, you have Leaping Lizards, Underground Infestation, Helen Makes Contact, Dodo Madness, and Future Foe. Season 2, you have Jurassic Mall, Mealworms Indeed, Catfight, Underwater Menace, personal favourite of mine because it's a Doctor Who reference, Silurian Sands, Traitor Revealed, and Concrete Menagerie. Series 3, you have Crocodile Fears, Haunted House, Medical Mayhem, A Gigantic Problem, Future Epidemic, For the Birds, Dragon Tales, Oh Brother, Herd Logic, and The Chase Continues. Series 4 is Back from the Cretaceous, Being Conspicuous, Lockdown, Breakfast Club, The Worm, The Brave Bride, and Surprising Visit. And finally with Season 5, we have Matt's Secrets, The Submarine, The Good Old Days, The Prototype, and The End of the Future, Parts 1 and 2. I have no idea why these names aren't used on all things, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's probably down to 2 reasons. The titles are kind of spoilery, and honestly, they're also kind of bad. Campy, in a way, which is fine, but I don't think Primeval ever set out to label itself as campy. Jess is 19? Yeah. Weird one. Only confirmed by behind-the-scenes media. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, I guess. Apart from the fact that a 19-year-old living in the centre of London is able to have an apartment this size, then has 2 30-year-olds move in with her, and also has a romantic relationship with a 26-year-old. Look, I don't judge, I just think that practically having her so young can cause a few story problems. Carcharodontosaurus and Therizinosaurus. 2 in 1 again, because again, they're basically the same thing. Primeval has a long plethora of creatures it intended to use at some point, but never ended up happening. But apparently, both the Carcharodontosaurus and the Therizinosaurus got a lot further into this development than other ones did. In the Primeval activity books, we have images of what both of the creatures would have looked like, suggesting that they got as far into development as having full CGI models to use in the show. I might be misremembering this one, but I was positive seeing big Primeval posters featuring this Carcharodontosaurus somewhere. My child brain might have made that up, but I was positive these existed, but couldn't find any pictures of them online. Diplodocus parasites. Same as last one, this info comes straight from an interview with Andrew Lee Plotz about a cancelled episode, and I'll just let the interview itself play here.
I know there was an episode where they had plans, and I think it was down to budget that they didn't do it, was Diplodocus coming through, which that's my favourite dinosaur, so just the sheer scale of it and the fact of what we'd have to do. Obviously, it wouldn't be a predator in any, but it would be smashing stuff up and confused, and they were going to do, like, parasites, because the parasites would have been huge, that would carry, and they were dropping off, and we were having to deal with them, so that would have been a cool episode if we didn't do that. And I always said I just wanted to ride a jet ski at some point, just that didn't happen. So, but it's really funny, they really humoured us, especially me, I was like, oh, what if we did this and what if we did that, and they're like, yeah, we'll do that later. So.
Spring-heeled Jack in the Menagerie. In Series 5, a raptor comes through an anomaly to London sometime around 1868. It establishes a nest and goes on a killing spree, killing Victorian Londoners and becoming the basis for the legend of Spring-heeled Jack, maybe even Jack the Ripper, with nobody knowing that it's a dinosaur and not a person. After plot happens, Spring-heeled Jack eventually ends up in the modern day where she is then knocked out but not killed. Considering the Ark's policy on killing creatures from the past, there's a fair chance that this means the raptor was moved to the menagerie until it could be returned to its own time. If this is the case, it's a little strange that this wasn't a plot element. Primeval portrays its raptors to be vicious killing machines. Keeping one in containment would have been, well, have you seen Jurassic Park? You could make the argument that because Spring-heeled Jack was already so far removed from her own time period that she couldn't have just slotted back in and so had to be killed instead, but again, that's something the show would usually have addressed. Chalk this up to the inconsistent writing of Series 4 and 5, I guess. Haven Holidays. I am very curious to see who will remember this one. only if you're in the UK and you watched the episodes as they aired for the first time will this ignite something in you. Haven Holidays are a caravan park and frequent holiday destination for people in UK, and also they sponsored Primeval. These took the forms as when the show was initially airing, there were these short segments set in a Haven Holidays caravan park where there was an implication of a creature incursion going on. That's about it, but they played one on every single ad break, and for someone like me, searching for the footage of these was an absolute trip down memory lane. Side note, this sponsorship also came full circle in the 4th season when the Labyrinthodon attacks a Holiday Haven park. Not sure that's the best advertisement you want to use, but going on from the Future Predator, we have the mutated Future Predator, an evolution of the Future Predator that was bastardized by the New Dawn project. And taking up the entire section of this category is Hillary. What is Hillary, I hear you ask? Well, ladies and gentlemen, meet Captain Hillary Becker. Obviously, as rough and tough of a soldier as Becker is, he's a bit embarrassed to have what some people would consider a girl's name, though there are in fact lots of men with that name, Hillary Benn and Hillary Jones, for instance. This originally was going to be revealed in episode 10 of the 3rd season, but in the end didn't make the final cut, and we only know this because some Giga Chad just emailed ITV about it and somehow got a response. So, there you go. Absolutely cursed material. Hillary Becker. What could possibly be worse than the mutated version of one of history's greatest killers? Well, there's only one possible contender. Caroline! Seriously, even if you remove all the stuff of her seducing and manipulating Connor, say it was all just part of the job, she had absolutely no reason to put Rex in that fridge other than to be a total to Abby. I don't care if she was reformed in the final. Caroline. Me and my homies hate Caroline. Lost YouTube game. I kind of remember this. At first I thought I didn't, but when I started to look at footage of it, it did ignite something inside me. Becker appears on the screen with 2 anomalies in the background and a mutated future predator prowling about. He warns you about the anomalies and creatures, then throws you a weapon as the whole screen starts to crack and creatures from beyond try to break through it. Apparently this one is lost media, but I don't know how reliable that source is. It's quite mental out there. There were so many small, unsuccessful Primeval games. The nature of it really does lend itself to the platform, but, well, I've said that before about comic books, and it's also the next entry. Primeval Big Finish. This one is probably the most recent entry on the list, or on par with the recent interview that I mentioned. Big Finish produce audio plays for British TV shows, most notably Doctor Who. You can't bring the old Doctors back on TV because they don't look the same, but balance of probability, they're still going to sound pretty similar to what they did when they were the Doctor, thereby creating a possibility for new episodes starring old Doctors, albeit as audio plays. And although the Primeval fanbase is small, most of us are also Doctor Who fans, so the idea has been chucked around more than a few times that they could do similar content for Primeval as well. By example, Primeval, as a license, shows an incredible amount of storytelling potential, being able to take any creature from any time period, put it in any setting, and the story practically writes itself, meaning it wouldn't be too big of a departure from the content Big Finish is already producing with Doctor Who. And under Big Finish, the license could be able to appeal to older audiences than it did with its time on air, the kids that saw the show originally and have a nostalgic attachment to it, but are now able to explore more adult-orientated themes like horror, complex character issues, substance abuse, other topics that you wouldn't run on primetime family television. Not to mention, realistically, Big Finish has a history of remedying some less popular characters in the eyes of the fans with well-written stories, and a similar opportunity could arise to fix the issues fans take with the new characters of 4 and 5. Fans have gotten in contact multiple times, and the responses we get are vague but somewhat hopeful. Big Finish had gone on record and said that during Primeval's initial success, they approached them about making spin-off material for the license and were turned down, and that as far as things go in the modern day, they're always on the lookout for new licenses that fans would enjoy, which I read as if they believe there's an audience for it, they're game, and goes without saying, nothing has been done with Primeval's license for nearly 10 years. If anything further is going to happen with it, Big Finish is the best hope we have. So, point being, let them know. Tweet them, email them, do what you can. Lady Christina can get a box set, I'm sure Hillary Becker can too. Peter Fincham. Peter Fincham is to Primeval what Michael Grade was to Doctor Who. To again use a direct quote from that recent interview, Peter Fincham had the oddest relationship with us. He turned it down at the BBC, and then when he came to ITV, he cancelled it. And then he recommissioned it, and then cancelled it again. He had 4 goes at the series. Convention appearances. This is hardcore into the fandom now, and not about one specific thing, but just a blanket term for the interactions that the cast have with fans. The actors for Connor, Abby, Danny, Becca and Stephen are all quite well-known convention goers, which is great for fans to be able to meet and talk genuinely with the stars of the show, but also shows a continued willing involvement with their association with the series. Cutter's Bestiary. Again, I'm referencing that interview. Honestly, you guys just need to read that if you're interested in it. Cutter's Bestiary was the original name for Primeval when it was pitched to ITV, but was scrapped for quote-unquote being a rubbish title. So sorry, microphone just died. I'll carry on, sorry if the rest of this sounds different. Fanfiction. Yep, it seems no matter what I do, I can't escape the topic. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, we like to be very fanfic positive on the channel, but it's definitely not something I thought I'd catch myself talking about in my mid-20s. For a show that is fairly obscure today, Primeval has an unusually high number of fanfictions to its name, working up about 8,000 between fanfiction.net and AO3. Why this is, I'm going to put down to the very cosy slice of life content that ran parallel to the creature action. Connor and Abby's living arrangements, Cutter's on-again, off-again relationship with his wife, Jess's crush on Becca. It all provides a surprisingly human side for a show that deals with such heavy sci-fi. And yes, I contributed a few stories to it myself. The Stephen Hart Sanctuary for Extinct Wildlife, which I put together as sort of reunion piece taking place 10 years after the show ended and seeing where everyone ended up. The Nerd and His Assistant, which takes place immediately after Series 5 and deals with the survival and eventual reformation of a wasted character, April Leonard. And Broken Lives in the Cretaceous, which had Abby being trapped through an anomaly and befriending a raptor. Gonna be honest, I don't think I ever finished this one, but by all means the other two are still up if you want to check them out. The poles cause the anomalies. This one was a fan theory from way back in the day. It proposed the idea that, although humans are capable of creating anomalies, they're actually a natural phenomena caused by the Earth's poles. The Earth's magnetic north and south poles gradually shift and even completely flip locations every 300,000 years or so. And the idea being that this big increase of electromagnetic activity literally tears the fabric of space and time apart in the build-up for it. Whether or not the anomalies are the cause of the pole shifting, or something the universe or the Earth does along to help the process, I don't know, but this would explain where the anomalies come from, exactly what the convergence was at the end of Series 5, why the time periods visited seem to come in chunks, and creates the idea that now that that's already happened, give it another 1,000 years for the electromagnetic energy to calm down and the anomalies will completely disappear. At least for another 300,000 years. All things considered, this one is pretty plausible as far as fan theories go. It's only so far down on the list because you have to have a pretty good understanding of magnetospheres, paleomagnetic studies, geomagnetic excursions, and other things that I'm definitely not reading off of Wikipedia. Racism allegations. Yeah. Weird one now. What does a show about prehistoric monsters in the modern day have to do with racial issues? Well, it's not necessarily an unwanted allegation, but hear me out, I'll give context. In 2007, Torchwood creator and former Doctor Who head writer Russell T Davies went on record about the show and criticised Primeval's lack of ethnic casting as shameful. Now, on one hand, I know Primeval and Doctor Who were competing for a bit at the time, but I think that's kind of a low blow of criticism, especially when Davies only really introduced 2 non-white actors to Doctor Who during his entire 5 years on the show. On the other hand, to be fair, Primeval had exactly 3 predominant non-white characters in its 5 seasons. Carol, Sarah, and Philip. 2 of which were antagonists, and the other one being built up as a main character, only to then be unceremoniously killed off-screen. I don't think there was any actual racial bias going on, not intentionally anyway, but I will admit it doesn't look particularly great. An unfortunate coincidence and nothing more, I'm sure, but, well, that's all I'll say on it. And that was the final one. I'll upload the iceberg onto Reddit when I put this video out, as well as leaving a link to the interview I kept referencing, as there's actually a bunch of really interesting stuff in there that I didn't mention that I think Primeval fans will love. Oh yeah, and sorry for not focusing too much on the Primeval novelizations and Prehistoric Park. There's a lot to talk about there, I do plan to, but trust me, those are both really good properties, and so I want to talk about them properly. That's about it from me. If you've enjoyed this, let me know. If you hated this, let me know. If you think there's something I've missed out, Keep it to yourself, I'll cry if I'm upstaged. If you'd be interested in more strange delves into niche media, please do subscribe, hit that notification bell, the usual. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and even if you haven't, I hope you found it just the least bit interesting.
I say the same as I always said. I think it's a show that could come back. Whether we'd be involved in that, I think the brand's strong enough to come back. It was, it was the last. I think it's pretty sad that it was the last drama on ITV television on a Saturday night. And it was a long time ago now, obviously, because it's just reality shows. I did have a very genuine father who came over to me today with his son, and he was just like, I've got to be honest, we've not found anything since Primeval that the four of us could sit down and watch. It's a really nice thing to say, and he was just like, there's just nothing, it balanced out quite well with the humour, and it was never too graphic, and it was exciting. So yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame, because I've got young children now. I'd like them to have a show that's British, a bit like Primeval. Because if they want something glossy and exciting, often they have to turn to, an American show.